All right, so my name is Tony Tang, and this is August 1st, 2016, and we are at the East San Gabriel Valley Japanese Community Center. And the purpose of this interview, Keepers of the Flame, is to preserve the stories of Japanese American pioneers who resided in the San Gabriel Valley. And this is a follow-up interview with Roy and Nancee Iketani. So, let's begin. Roy, can you recall what it was like living in Boyle Heights before the war, specifically living on Dakota Street?
Okay, that's the time of my youth. As far as I know, I lived there all my life, or during that time that I was there, I lived on Dakota Street. I went to First Street School, grammar school, and graduated there. And in those days, it was a sixth grade graduation. And then I went to Stevenson Junior High School for junior high, and I was in the seventh grade when the war started. And as I mentioned previously, really had no kinds of discrimination back in those days because the people were pretty diverse. All of the kids were pretty diverse. Jewish, Mexican, Japanese, white, and we all went to school there at First Street School and played with each other and had really no problems as a child there. It wasn't until after I went to Stevenson Junior High School in the seventh grade that I learned, after the war started, that all of a sudden I was a Jap. Not until that time. But things took a kind of a weird turn at that time because the kids that I used to play with all of a sudden, would call me a Jap. And it was because of the war, and I guess probably because of their parents. But that was it. And then the war started in December. And in May of 1942, my folks and I went to camp, and we went to the train station and went directly to our camp. We didn't stop at an interim place.
Can you tell me the race of the children you used to get along with at the high school before the war?
The junior high.
The junior high.
Who they were?
Mm-hmm. What race?
Well, they were all
friends that you hung out with specifically.
Well, the kids that I hung out with mostly were Japanese kids, and that lived in my neighborhood. But had a friend who was a Mexican guy, and
can you tell me his name?
His last name was Padilla. I don't remember. I can't remember his first name. And the Japanese people that I used to hang out with back in those days were people like Yukio Nakamura, Tom Kitabayashi, Mas Fuji. Were some of the names I can remember. Howard.
Don't ask me. I didn't live in your neighborhood.
Yeah. Can't think of his last name offhand.
And what was one of the fondest memories that we had playing with these friends who were Japanese? What did you do in the neighborhood?
Well, we played games on the street. We'd play not baseball but softball. We would play tag, and we'd play with a ball and trying to hit each other. We'd one of the more important games that we played was kick the can. Huh? Oh yeah.
Terrific.
Why was this game important?
Well, it was important, I guess, because I used to enjoy it. Yeah. And of course, back in those days, I went to Japanese school. Went to Japanese school, I guess on the weekend or just Saturdays.
Really? We had to go every day after school.
I can't remember whether I went or not, but the Japanese school was fairly close by, and I used to be able to walk to it. And the Japanese schools in that area would have a get-together once a year with a kind of a picnic for all of the parents, and they'd have races and track events, and I would run in the track event.
Yes, I remember you telling me that you would win these races.
Yeah, right.
You were very fast back in those days.
Back in those days, right. Nowadays, I'm pretty slow.
Do you still have contact with your friends from junior high?
No, not at all. It's kind of interesting that in the home that I lived in, normally, well, the people that were in that area went to a camp called Poston 1 in Arizona. But interestingly enough, one of my friends went to Manzanar. One of my friends next door went to Heart Mountain. And I guess that's all I can remember right now. But it turns out that back in those days, these friends that went to other camps were able to contact their family friends, and to try to be with the family friends would change their addresses to the address of their friend, so they would go to the camp with them. And in the LA area, I guess there were different camps that people went to. Manzanar was one, and Heart Mountain was another one, and Poston was a third. We went to Poston, but some of my friends went to other camps, and I pretty much lost contact with all of those friends back in those days.
Do you recall ever playing at a local park or on the street when you were young?
Yeah. We went to a place called Lincoln Park. My folks would take me there on a weekend, like a Sunday or something like that. And I can remember the park had a boat. You could ride on a little motorboat, and I used to like that. It was a fun thing to do. They had a zoo there. Used to go to the zoo. Fun to watch the animals in the zoo. And they had an alligator farm that we went to that was kind of interesting.
And excuse me for jumping around a little bit here, but Nancee, I remember you telling me about the FBI.
Yeah,
Coming
they
to take
came and took my father away, and they wouldn't tell him. They just said, "You're coming with us," and that was it. And so we didn't know where he was until he walked in to the camp that we were in Tampran. And we didn't know why he was back or what he was taken for or anything. They wouldn't tell us. So I guess I was little too. They wouldn't be talking to me anyway. And so that's about all I remember. I was like, just remember them coming to the house and taking them away from the house. And we could barely say goodbye to him. And we didn't know where they were going. Yeah. And I was what? I was in my not in my teens yet.
It was 1942. So
I'm born in 31.
Yeah, 10.
So I'm only about 10 years old. And so we didn't know anything. My sisters probably knew because I was one of the younger kids in my family. And I don't know.
Florence?
Hmm?
You want to talk about Florence?
What about her? Oh, she was a nurse and she became a doctor.
Oh, but back in those days, she was going to college, and she was one that was pretty violent about them taking the father. Right?
Well,
She didn't like the idea that they were taking him like that.
Yeah. Well, she was kind of.
She was in college at the time.
Yeah, she was at Cal. And, but she didn't know really how to, just say, hey, what are you doing? What are you taking my father for? That's about all she could ask, because they wouldn't say anything. And so we never really knew. I guess we were so young that, no one wanted to talk to us about it, because they said, just kids, And,
Wasn't she the one that wrote the letter to Eleanor Roosevelt?
yeah, she wrote a letter to Eleanor Roosevelt.
Who was vice president at the time?
And,
Not vice president. She was the wife of the president.
and, yeah, it was really hard for her and for us, because we didn't understand. We'd never been through anything like this before, and we didn't know how we were supposed to react too. It was a difficult thing, and I don't know. We just played along with them. So all we learned to do was, if they said something, you had to do it, and you couldn't really argue with them. And you could try, but nothing could come of it, because we really didn't know what to complain about, except the fact that they were taking, like my father and my brothers away. And at that time, we couldn't differentiate on who was really the bad guys. But anybody who took your father was a bad guy. And when they took my father, then we didn't see my father for many months. He was just taken to camp. It's been so long ago, I'm sorry, I can't remember too much. And I was so young that I can't really remember the details or anything. My sisters probably could. I mean, there were 9 kids in our family. And, but we just thought we must be guilty of something. Because, why would they take you if you weren't bad? So I could never understand that. And, I have 5 or 6 sisters, and they're all older than I. And, that's the first discrimination I ever felt. And, it was very hard for me, because I couldn't understand, because I was too young, too. I was young, and I couldn't understand why they would be taking my father and not my whole family. Then later we did get, taken to camp. And then he came to us sometime after we got into the camp. He joined our family again. But we never did understand, because I guess at my age, I couldn't really understand why he was taken and why we were taken. It was just, it couldn't have been more than 10, huh?
10, yeah, about 10.
And but luckily there was I had a lot of sisters, and we sort of made it because we were a family. But we didn't understand a lot of the things that were going on. And my sisters too were also young, and so it was rather rough for us because we didn't know what the situation was and why we were being. At that time, I didn't realize we were being discriminated against, and it's just that, you just say, well, why are they taking us? My dad's not bad, but they took him away and they're not bringing him back. And so we just had to make the best of it. My mother, luckily she was around. I guess she didn't know too much either, but she managed to keep us quiet long enough that we weren't a burden on anybody else. But we still didn't know what. They didn't tell us why we were going and why he was not coming with us, and they didn't tell us why he was not coming with us. It's just that he was just taking us, They were just taking us, and we have to abide by the law as we knew it at that time. And we didn't know whether we should protest. On what grounds we could protest except say, hey, that's my father. I want my father. But they didn't say anything, You just had to say, listen, we're the boss, so you just do what we tell you to do and don't ask any more questions. And I had sisters that were, I must have been about 10, and they were in their teens, I guess. And they could complain and make sense out of something, but I could never, I didn't believe in anything because I was just too young to know what they were doing. But I just knew that we were being taken. And so we said, well, we better shut up and just do what they tell us to do, or else they're going to take the rest of us away like they took our father. We didn't see our father for, I think, a couple of years or something. But, and I lived in Oakland, California at that time. So I didn't know really much. I was only about 10, so.
Thank you for sharing that. We're going to jump into San Gabriel now, after y'all got married. And the first question I want to ask is what kind of traditions and practices did you keep growing up?
Well, it's kind of an interesting question.
Were we married?
Well, we got married in '57, and we lived in Los Angeles right after we got married, and it wasn't until 1963 that we moved to the San Gabriel Valley, into Covina. But we kept up stuff like going to church. Tried to make the kids good citizens, if you will. And,
Japanese school.
What?
Japanese school.
Well, we tried to get them in the Japanese school, but they didn't like it, so we gave it up. And that Japanese school was here, because when we moved to San Gabriel Valley, we joined this community center. Not at this site, but there was another site that they were at, and it was an attempt to try to get the kids to at least have Japanese friends, and because of the schools they were going to were primarily white, and so like I say, we joined the community center. We also joined the church here in the San Gabriel, in El Monte, the Sage Methodist Church, and had the kids going there, learning about good Christian values. But I was raised as a Christian, and I went to a Baptist church back in the Boylites days.
Oh, I did.
Yeah. So we tried to keep that part of the culture going, to instill good values in them. And then, like I say, we came and joined the community center to provide them access, at least, to Japanese people. But we kind of got involved in the community center. My kids took judo. Didn't take Japanese school, but they took judo. And played basketball with the Sabres.
There's no real leadership around.
Yeah.
How many kids do you have?
We have 7.
And I come from a family of 11 children.
But and between the 7, there's 20-year separation between the oldest and the youngest. 20-year separation between Diana and Debbie.
Oh, between the
first and the
ages,
last.
Yeah.
Had 4 boys and 3 girls.
When did you have your first kid?
Don't ask me.
Well, Debbie was Nancee's child by a former marriage, but our first kid was in 1952. No, not 52, 58. Right? Darren was born in 58.
I don't remember.
Yeah, 58.
Was he born here or in LA?
He was born in Los Angeles,
Who was?
Darren. And we had the second son was also born in Los Angeles, Todd by name. And all the other ones were born here in the San Gabriel Valley.
Do you recall which hospital? The one in LA?
Yeah, Kaiser. They were all born at Kaiser. And let's see, the Kaiser Hospital that they were born at was the one on Sunset Boulevard. That was the main Kaiser at the time, one of the main Kaisers. As a matter of fact, I think all the kids were born at the same hospital.
Don't ask me. I can't remember any
Kaiser.
of that.
Are there any Japanese customs that you kept?
No, I'm afraid not. We, well, except for things like on New Year's Day we would eat ozoni, which is a soup.
Mochi.
Which is a soup that is mixed with mochi and certain kinds of vegetables. But it was a kind of a customary thing to have ozoni on New Year's Day.
And that's what your parents did.
Yeah, that's a culture that was kept up. And even to this day, though not all the kids do that, my oldest daughter actually does that. She likes ozoni. So she'll go to a restaurant in Japantown and ask for a chikara mochi, which means strength mochi.
What's the history behind that custom?
The history, I guess, was that it was one of those things that you did at New Year's Day so that your next year would be a good year. There were a lot of things that they did back then that culturally, you cleaned up everything at the end of the year so that the next year would be clean and you could have a good life. Right?
Huh?
Right?
I guess so. I just don't really remember much.
But that was the reason for that soup that we used to make.
Oh, my mom used to make it.
Yeah.
Because it was just a traditional. So,
And the other thing too was eating mochi, which is the
we used to go to see them make the mochi. They, the families would get together and they would have this pounding session of the pounding of the.
yeah. Back in those days, we used to go up north to Redwood City, and where was John's second place now? What was John's second address? Not Redwood City, but he moved from Redwood City to.
Oh, I don't even remember.
Well, in that area, and they
Redwood
used
City.
to have an annual
Redwood City.
mochitsuki. What?
Redwood City.
That's where we first was, but the place we went to afterwards.
Oh, shut down.
Anyway, we would go there, and they'd have a big party, mochitsuki party, and they'd make these rice.
Yeah, all the men would, they would
We would pound the rice.
pound the rice. The ladies would make all the little
Little billets that became mochi.
Yeah, that became the mochi pieces.
But that used to be a kind of an annual custom for many, many years. And then it stopped for a long time, maybe 5 or 6 years. And then my kids started to do that over at my daughter's place. So currently we do that around Christmas time. And my kids are involved in putting that show together. And we get, the cousins and the nephews and nieces
Yeah, we have so many.
come out
I think in a way that's good.
So it's kind of
because
nice.
It was nice because a lot of people didn't have anything, but we had a lot of kids, so the kids got along good.
It takes a bit of skill to actually pound the rice, because the rice is steamed and it's hot. And you have to keep moving the rice around in the bowl.
You had to pound it.
And,
There was like a big vat.
Yeah, and then people actually, the guys that hammer the rice, use wooden mallets, and they actually pound the rice up pretty hard. So you got to get your hand in there and move the stuff around, so that the rice is pounded on all sides. And so my middle kid, I guess, kind of got the swing of this, and so he's the one guy that actually moves the rice around when people are pounding it. And they have 3 or 4 people pounding it, and sometimes they have more when the children join in. But that's another customary thing that a lot of families did and still do, or buy the stuff, buy the mochi made. And they like to eat the mochi with soy sauce.
Well, it was traditional, so.
Yeah, and but the sauces that they add, are different kinds of things like grated radish or daikon, the fermented beans. Mix it up with fermented beans needed, and or just soy sauce and sugar would be used. So they kind of all learned about these kinds of things and started, around New Year's they would actually do these things and enjoy the mochi.
Yeah, we tried to remember what we could.
But those are the cultural kinds of things that, when you start talking about it a little bit, it comes to memory. But that's about all I can remember, really, of the culture.
And you said your family used to practice it when you were young, right? What was the fondest memory of you and your family making mochi?
Well, we didn't make the mochi in our family when with just the 4 kids that we had, my sister and I and my parents. But we bought the mochi, Oh, and the other thing that they do is at that back in those days was actually they'd get a large mochi and a smaller mochi and set it on top of each other. And what did they do with the tangerine?
What?
The tangerine. Put it
It
on
was
top.
it
Was a kind of a
traditional thing that you just put on top. Completed.
decoration, I guess, that you put in the house at that time.
We didn't know what it meant or anything.
That's another one of the cultural things that I guess people do. And the other cultural thing that we used to do back in those days is there's a girls' day and there's a boys' day.
It still is.
It still is. And on those days, they would do the girls' day. They'd have girl dolls that they would set up on tiers, little dolls. And then on boys' day, I think they used to have dolls too, huh? Boys' day.
What?
They'd have dolls, niños that they would set up.
Probably. I don't really remember.
Well, those were another cultural things, but never followed through on those.
Only if somebody remembered.
Yeah, I think the center remembers those days, at least the girls' days. But
Yeah, the girls
we've
made
never
all
followed
those,
through on anything
all
like
the
that.
little mochis, and the boys and men pounded the mochi.
Yeah, we went through that.
And why did you decide to keep the tradition of making mochi?
Well, it's something we like to eat.
Yeah, well, we grew up knowing that, we ate that stuff, and it was made by people pounding it, and so it was just a way of life.
It's a good party to my my daughter, whose place we use for pounding the mochi, has about 100 people come over, and they all bring food to eat and a lot of partying type things going on. And it's another one of those sessions where all of the cousins get together and meet each other. So it's kind of a family kind of a thing. And a lot of families do that.
Yeah, I guess it started in the country, huh? The country
Well,
people.
Country people did it, yeah.
They had the facilities, and it wasn't fancy or anything. You just
But they also have a facility here, not a facility, but there's a church in the San Gabriel Valley, the San Gabriel Methodist Church. And that particular church has a group of kids that go there, Japanese kids that go there. And it's called Kodomo no Ie, which means the home of the
children.
children. And they have an annual Mochitsuki festival. And there are a lot of other places that have annual Mochitsuki festivals.
Because there was something that was.
But it's all made the same way. There are actual machines now that will automatically make mochi for you. You just buy the rice and you wash it, and you feed it into this machine, and it actually produces the rice that is the big piece of rice that you pull from to make the small mochis. Yeah. And we used to do that on a couple of occasions at home around New Year's Day. But, again, it's a kind of a party thing, people come over and enjoy themselves. Always make a lot of
It'd
food.
be a family thing.
Yeah.
That, all the family friends would come over, and they'd bring some of the ingredients, the rice or the soy sauce and different things. And it was a lot of fun. Because there was really no manners you had to know, huh? You just had to know if you're going to work, you're going to get your hands dirty in this thing. And, and then then you just did what your older sisters or brother did, but there was no conversation on why we were doing it or anything, huh?
It was a cultural thing, that's
Yeah.
what it was.
Just said that's what we did at New Year's. You made
That's around New
mochi.
Year's, you know.
So it was traditional, and then they had, the other additional foods that you ate with the mochi, right?
Well, people would bring food to
Beans
eat.
and
yeah.
stuff. But we just did that. I mean, it was just country-like, huh? Nothing really fancy or anything. It just, they need to make a big one. It was just a mound of mochi. And then from that, you would have these smaller mochis that you ate.
Right outside the door here on the corner is a bowl that was used to pound the mochi in. Right outside the door here.
The barrel?
The barrel, yeah. Donated by somebody who used it back in those days to make mochi.
Those things are long gone.
All right, so we're going to take a break because we've just hit the 30-minute mark. So how about we reconvene in about 5-10 minutes?
Sure.
Okay.
Takala.
Mom?